you guys, so I wanted to show you a quick tutorial on how I add my lock sprinkles. You'll need these items right here. You need some thread, needles, a needle threader, which will make it much easier. You don't have to have one. The blue one, I got it from Shein. And then different size little beads. I got mine from Walmart. So I start off by taking the thread, cutting a few pieces of those. I usually make it probably 2 to 3 times the length of my lock, because you want to make sure you have enough thread at the end once you finish, threading the whole lock, that you can tie it off, and you don't want to be struggling with a little piece of thread. So I usually make it pretty long, because you can always cut it shorter. So as you can see, I take the needle and I get my threader right there, which makes it super easy. Like the silver one I had, the silver needle threader, it just comes in a sewing kit. So you can use that if you have it. It just makes it much easier than threading it by hand, which I have done that when my threader broke. But either way, as long as you get the needle, get the thread through the needle, and then make it kind of even, pull it even on both sides, because you're going to tie a knot on the end. And I usually tie mine probably somewhere between 7 to 10 times to make the knot big enough so it does not slide through my lock. This is actually going to be the most tedious part of the process. Once you get, a couple of needles threaded, I'll usually do like 3 to 5 needles, with the thread already in there, the knots already tied on there. And then the actual sewing the beads in your hair is not, it doesn't take that long. And then the tying the end of the thread is kind of tedious, but this would probably be the most tedious part to me, is tying these little knots. And you do want to make sure you tie the knot right on top of the last knot, otherwise you'll just have a bunch of knots in a row. You do just kind of have to play with it and work with it. That was my 5th knot. See, that one I kind of messed it up. The knot wasn't right on top of the last knot, and I tried to just undo it and fix it, but I think I just ended up picking up where I left off, making the knots on the bigger knot. Because sometimes you make one that's off, it doesn't really matter. Just make the next one right on top of the bigger knot you were already working with. So, and like I said, if you want to make this part, like if you want to do a bunch of needles and just have them already sitting there, I do that sometimes just to feel like I'm speeding along the process. So you see, I got me a nice knot right there. So you're gonna cut the excess off. So you're left with just a knot on the end. So then you'll pick the lock you want to use. And I like to start at the top. When I first did these, I started at the bottom. I find it easier if you start at the top. Start at the, most locked part of your hair. Pull that through and then just kind of give it a little tug to make sure it's not gonna just slide through. And then put your first bead on. Slide that on there, and then you want to put the needle as kind of close to that bead and maybe angle it down so it's like it's kind of diagonally down from that one, if you'll see what I mean in just a sec. If you want it to be straight across from each other, you can. That's fine. If you want to put like a bunch on one lock, but that's just how I'm choosing to do this. Some people like to just put a bunch of lock sprinkles on one lock or maybe two locks, but I'm doing multiple locks in my head, so I kind of want them spread out. Be careful to not get your thread tangled up, because then your beads will be loose. Like you'll get down 3 beads and then you're like, oh, why is that one loose up there? Because your thread got tangled at some point. So just keep an eye on that. The last time I did these, I did all different colors. So I did like alternating colors. I'm doing all gold ones, but there are different sizes and different like shades of gold, like a shimmery gold, a kind of see-through gold, and then a smaller one. So I'm alternating between all those things. But you could definitely do all the same color, you know, different colors, whatever you want to do. So I just try to make sure none of them are loose. Make sure that the thread is pulled all the way through after I do each one. I do sometimes still end up with, you know, loose thread, and some of them might be loose. It just depends on how loose they are. That determines if I actually want to redo the whole lock. Because sometimes I'm like, no, it'll be okay. And you just do this down the whole lock. Now, what I like about these is I actually will wear them for a few months, and I'll wash my hair with them in and everything. You may lose some sometimes, but you can always choose to put them back. Or, like, as you can see, I have so many in my head. If I lose any, I really don't worry about it because I still have plenty. Be careful because I stay stabbing my fingers with these needles, but see, like there I got my thread all tangled up. I had to figure that out. And these are the little glass beads that you can make bracelets and jewelry and stuff out of. I got mine from Walmart, so anywhere you can buy craft beads, you can get bigger ones, smaller ones. I will say be mindful if you get smaller ones, because I do have some small, really small ones that I've been trying to put on here, but certain needles won't go through them. So just make sure your needle is small enough too. We're almost to the end. My locks were not a lot, but they were shorter when I did this last time. So on some of them I was like, oh my God, when am I gonna get to the end? But you could always do like half a lock. You don't have to do the entire length of the lock as well. We're almost there. I know I just did that, but and you can actually do this just a little as you go, because that's actually how I do mine. I'll maybe do, 2 to 4 strands at a time, and then of course I need a break because my arms be hurting, neck be tense from holding your arms up. But I know some people just want a little sparkle. They don't want as many as I want anyway, so it probably wouldn't be as much work if you just did like 1 or 2 locks. Look, I said we almost to the end. I thought we was almost to the end. Now we almost to the end. Goodness. I also just do this like while I'm watching a show I'm interested in or listening to music or something, so it doesn't really seem like it takes as long. The only really long, tedious part is the thread, the needle, and tying the knots at the end. Oh, by the way, I'm rewatching Power, the Power series, so I think I'm in season 6 now. I think I was getting about to the end now. When you put your last one on there, if you want to thread it back through that bead again, or I just like to thread it through the lock a couple of times, like 2 or 3 times at the end. And then you want to cut your string but leave lots of room on the string, on the thread, that way that you can tie it in a knot as well. So you're gonna cut it, cut your needle off, and then I'll tie it on one side and then alternate and tie on the other side. The only thing is, when you cut that string, just make sure you don't cut the knot. So I like to pull it kind of tight so that I can see exactly where the knot is, so that I don't cut it. Because I have done that before, and then basically it was a waste of all my work because it's going to eventually come out. Maybe tie it 3 to 4 times. That way you can actually see the knot. My show was doing something. I had to probably skipping that intro. You know, you keep watching the same show. It's like, I don't need to see the intro again. All right, so I've tied as many knots as I want to tie, and then see how I'm making sure I know where the knot is before I cut it, because I don't want to cut the knot and then have wasted all the time. So I cut it. Nope, not yet. I'm wrapping it around my finger so that I can pull it tight enough so I can see where to cut it. And there you go. Lock sprinkles. Hope that tutorial helped someone. Please share. Thanks so much.